So from the first video of this series, we discussed how Kievan Rus, or Rus, is not actually the first Ukrainian state, but a kingdom that was the predecessor to Eastern Slavic Europe, namely Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus. But now, let's talk about the first Ukrainian state, or rather states. So in 1917, following the October Revolution, which led to a Bolshevik victory in Russia, there were two states that sprung up in Ukraine: the Ukrainian SSR, headed by the Bolsheviks, and the Ukrainian National Republic, or the Ukrainian People's Republic, which was set up in 1918 in Lviv by the Ukrainian nationalists. As I'm sure you're familiar with and aware of, just because the Bolsheviks were able to seize state power did not mean that there weren't other ideological groups that weren't still trying to take state power from them, which led to the Russian Civil War. And of course, Ukraine was no exception. Starting from Lviv and eventually making their way to Kyiv, the nationalists set up the Ukrainian National Republic, which was governed by the Central Rada. The Ukrainian Central Rada was actually formed in Lviv in 1914, and it supported Austria during World War I, but it didn't really have any legitimacy. But what it did was it set up a foundation for an impending government. As Ukrainian nationalists declared independence in Lviv, it posed a problem because the Polish forces still believed it belonged to them. So what it led to was hostile skirmishes between the Ukrainian National Army and the Polish forces, putting the UNR at a detriment. In February of 1919, the Bolsheviks were able to take Kyiv and drive the nationalists westward. This is also when Simon Petliura, an infamous Ukrainian nationalist, became the head of state. Because the Bolsheviks were devastating the Ukrainian National Army, Petliura signed a pact with Poland, recognizing Galicia and Volhynia as Polish territory, in turn for military aid against the Soviets, and formally recognizing the Dnieper as Ukrainian territory, resulting in the start of the Polish-Soviet War. But by 1920, the Bolsheviks, or the now Soviet Red Army, began advancing closer towards Warsaw, or Warsaw, resulting in the Treaty of Riga that drew peace among both the Polish and the Soviet governments, and it split both Belarus and Ukraine into Polish and Soviet territories, leaving the nationalists of both governments as governments in exile. But a lesser-known fact about the UNR governments is that in their struggle against the Soviets, 100,000 Ukrainian Jews were executed in pogroms. While Petliura did not say anything directly about killing Jews, his government and his army still believed in the Judeo-Muscovite Bolshevik trope in that Jews would be loyal to Russia and communists first and foremost. This is important to note for in the future because at the heart of Ukrainian nationalism is antagonism against the Russians and communists, which actually fed their anti-Semitism. And this remains true to this day. Follow Midwestern Marks for more history content, more Marxist theory, and news. As always, fuck NATO.